I think he should have asked somebody, maybe his father or his grandfather, about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Dr. J, Isaiah Thomas, Larry Bird, Kev McHale, Clyde Drexler, Dominique Wilkins.
Because when I hear that and I really start thinking about it, I'm like, nah, that's not true, because you have multiple players who had hella skill.
If I'm being honest, bro, I don't think anybody in this generation could have played like 20 years ago.
You know what my problem is? Like all these guys that have an entitlement when it comes to certain shit, but you wouldn't know who fucking Horace Grant was. The knowledge of the game ain't there.
Anthony Edwards made headlines when he dismissed the skill level of the players in the 1990s. According to him, outside of Michael Jordan, there weren't many skilled guys back then. Now, I get it. Edwards is young, ultra-confident, and he's playing in an era where we're seeing crazy levels of talent across the board. But let's be real, this take is flat out wrong. The 90s weren't just about brute strength and physicality. The best players of that decade were some of the most skilled basketball minds the game has ever seen, and today we're going to prove it. This is a definitive list of the 10 most skilled players of the 1990s, and trust me, it wasn't just Michael Jordan. Kicking things off at number 10 is a player that was supposed to be the future of the league, Anthony "Penny" Hardaway. If you didn't see him play before the injuries, you missed out on something special. A 6'7" point guard with elite handle, impeccable court vision, and a silky smooth mid-range game, Penny was as skilled as they come. He had the ability to get to his spots whenever he wanted, and his footwork was so polished that even elite defenders struggled to contain him. Pair that with a lethal post game and elite finishing ability, and you have one of the most well-rounded guards of the decade. If injuries didn't cut his prime short, there's no telling how high he'd be on this list. Kevin Johnson was lightning in a bottle. He wasn't the biggest name of the 90s, but make no mistake, this guy was an offensive weapon. The Suns star point guard had one of the quickest first steps of any player in history, allowing him to blow by defenders at will. And he wasn't just a scorer. His passing ability was elite, with pinpoint precision on the move. Johnson had a knack for carving up defenses with both his scoring and playmaking, making him an absolute nightmare to guard. But what really set KJ apart was his ability to finish at the rim. Despite standing just 6'1", he dunked on Hakeem Olajuwon in the playoffs, which tells you all you need to know about his fearlessness. He had the skill, the confidence, and the all-round game that made him a problem every single night. Most people remember David Robinson as a dominant physical specimen, a chiseled 7-footer who could outrun and outjump just about anyone. But what often gets overlooked is just how skilled he was. Robinson wasn't just dunking on people. He had a legitimate face-up game, an automatic mid-range jumper, and one of the most polished post arsenals of his era. His footwork was pristine, allowing him to get clean looks against the best defenders in the entire league. And if you need more proof that Robinson wasn't just an athlete, how about this? He once dropped 71 points in a single game. Centers don't do that without an elite offensive package. Reggie Miller was one of the deadliest shooters the game had ever seen, but what really made him special was his ability to create offense without the ball. He was a master at running off screens, using misdirection, and getting just enough space to get off his shot. There was an art to the way Miller played. He wasn't physically imposing, but he manipulated defenders with his movement in a way that very few players ever have. Miller's skill wasn't just about shooting, it was about knowing how to get open, reading defenses, and striking when the moment was right. He wasn't just a shooter, he was an offensive mastermind who terrorized defenders for an entire decade. Some people will tell you Charles Barkley was just a bruiser, a guy who overpowered opponents with sheer strength. Those people didn't watch him play. Barkley was an absolute technician on the offensive end. His footwork in the post was elite, his ball handling for a power forward was absurd, and his ability to finish through contact was legendary. At just 6'6", Barkley dominated bigger defenders with a mix of agility, finesse, and power. His mid-range game was lethal, and he had one of the most instinctive passing abilities of any big man in the league. If Barkley was just a power player, he wouldn't have been able to win an MVP over Michael Jordan in the middle of his prime. The man was a basketball genius, plain and simple. When we talk about pure skill, we have to mention Mark Price. The guy was essentially a prototype for the modern day point guard. His handle was immaculate, his shooting was automatic, and his passing was as precise as it gets. Price could pick apart defenses in so many ways, whether it was pulling up from deep, orchestrating the pick and roll, or breaking ankles with his quick first step. People forget just how influential Price was. His free throw shooting mechanics became the gold standard. His ability to shoot off the dribble laid the foundation for the elite guards that followed. Price was a hooper's hooper, the kind of player other NBA stars studied, and he might be the lesser known name on this entire list. John Stockton was not flashy, and that's exactly why people underestimate his skill level. The man holds the NBA's all-time records for assists and steals, not because he was the most athletic, but because his fundamentals were perfect. Stockton had an unreal basketball IQ, knowing exactly where his teammates needed the ball and delivering it with pinpoint accuracy. And while people often label him as just a passer, he was also a deadly shooter. Nearly 40% from three over his career, automatic from mid-range, and always in control of the game's tempo. Skill isn't just about what looks fancy, it's about consistency, precision, and impact. Just ask his buddy Karl Malone. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Magic Johnson is considered an 80s player, but he still logged over 7,000 minutes in the 90s and was still one of the most skilled, even as his career wound down. His passing ability was second to none, and his vision made him one of the most dangerous playmakers the game had ever seen. But Magic wasn't just about passing, he was a scoring threat as well. His post-game was lethal, his touch around the rim was elite, and he had an uncanny ability to control the tempo of the game. Even in the early 90s, Magic's skill set was still among the very best in the league, and he was still so hybrid at 6'9". Coming in at number 2, we have the most skilled big man in NBA history, Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. His footwork was otherworldly. Watching him in the post was like watching an artist paint a masterpiece. The Dream Shake, that wasn't just a move, it was poetry in motion. Hakeem had every post counter in the book, and his ability to read defenses and react in real time made him virtually unguardable. On top of that, he was an elite passer, an excellent shooter for a center, and a defensive mastermind. Hakeem's skill set was so complete that he personally tutored future Hall of Famers like Kobe Bryant and LeBron James in the post. That tells you everything you really need to know. At number 1, there's really no debate. Michael Jordan wasn't just the most skilled player of the 90s, some might say he was the most skilled player to ever live. His footwork was flawless, his mid-range game was untouchable, and his ability to dominate in the clutch was simply on another level. Jordan combined elite athleticism with a level of skill that made him unstoppable. In a game that has been completely dominated by bigs for most of its history, a shooting guard who possessed every skill at a high level put together an all-time resume that still hasn't been matched to this day, and it's no surprise why so many people have him as the GOAT. Of course, no video would be complete without saluting the honourable mentions. Karl Malone was an elite scorer who helped John Stockton generate his all-timer production. Scottie Pippen was an underrated point forward who may have been the most versatile defender ever. Chris Mullin was a dead-eye shooter and a solid secondary playmaker. Heck, Larry Bird played 3 post-prime seasons in the 90s and drew some consideration from those alone. And then there's Tim Hardaway, whose signature dribble move is still known as the killer crossover. Chris Webber, Sabonis, Clyde Drexler, Gary Payton, Tony Kukoc, and Grant Hill all need to be included too. But what do you guys think? Was there anyone we missed? Or was there anyone that needed to be included in the top 10? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more upcoming videos and NBA content. My name is Damian Peters. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.